Shalom, Kahala Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yashai, Ba'Shem Kokodash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. We're the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the ceasing of the Golden City, also known as the downfall of America, written about in the Bible. But before we get started, let's go ahead and read this prophecy. This is Isaiah 14:4. That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Now, I recently came across these images on the Midjourney subreddit on Reddit. Now, if you're unaware what Midjourney is, it's an AI image program. Basically, you go into this program and you go, type up a bunch of different prompts, and it'll spit out AI generated art. Well, this subreddit, which is basically a community on Reddit, it likes to post different AI images and content that thinks is going to be popular. And these series of images that we're about to go through right now is entitled The American Dream Over the Decades. Now, what this series of images show is how the American society has degraded since the 30s. What we're currently looking at right now is an AI generated image of what the AI machine Midjourney believes is a good culmination, which inhabits the 1930s, right, or encompasses the spirit of 1930s. Well, let's go ahead and go through this, and let's go and see what this AI program has observed through culture and through images and through all the information that it's absorbed. Let's see what it sees over the decades. So this right here, this right here is 1920s. Okay, so over 100 years ago. So right here you can see you had men dressed in, nice apparel. Even the children, right, are depicted, dressed nicely. You have a bustling society, a lot of movement, a lot of community, right? You had a nation that was growing, not only in strength but also in economic power. Next, let's go to the 30s. Here you see America, right? And it's, the quintessential American dream, right? You had a nice little house, you had a little family, right? You had the cars that, that people would come up on, because again, remember, the cars weren't invented no longer than, let's actually go to the Bible timeline. Cars came onto the scene in 1885 by the men of Teman, right? The so-called Germans, right? It says the first combustible engine car is invented by Carl Benz, a German Temanite, right? And goes into production in Europe. So again, about 50 years down the road, that's when the car, came from this to basically this right here, where, if you were a successful American citizen, you had at least one family car, right? The wife stayed home and took care of the family and raised up decent, honorable children, right? Next, this right here is 1940s. Again, this is basically right when World War II was taking place, okay? The 1920s is basically when America, I should say, came out of the World War I, the First World. What you're seeing here is the era of the Second World, right? Right where America was about to go into the Second World War against the Axis powers, that being Germany, Japan, I believe Turkey, and other countries that are escaping my mind, Italy and stuff. Well, at this point, America was a very strong nation. And again, one thing I want you to notice is, where are your people of color? Where's your Judites, your Issacharites? Well, even the AI knows that they weren't in the prosperous purview of the Edomites, the main inhabitants or owners of America, right? The Golden City. See, this right here is the great which the Edomites of today want to go back to. So when they say make America great again, this is what they're talking about, right? I don't believe that a lot of these devils consciously, want the other nations, right, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, to go back to a subjugated history. They simply just want their history to go revert back to the point of greatness. But see, what they don't understand is that for them to be at this level, they had to subject us, right? The people of color are the people who were the laborers, the people who ran the kitchens, that ran all the construction sites, did all the heavy lifting, right? That weren't getting paid their fair share. We basically our labor was not accounted for, as the scriptures say. And why? Well, because these devils, they ruled, and they ruled unjustly. 1950s. Okay, this is after the Edomites won World War II and America had established itself as a world leading power. You'll see here the AI Midjourney depicts the Edomite in its prime, in its height. Okay, where the Edomite nation was flourishing. You had a full family depicted here with a nice car, nice home, right? A family was growing, right? This is what these Edomites longed for. Okay, this is when they were in their power. The 50s is the period where you had MLK and you had all these civil rights leaders starting to wake up, right? This is when they were still young. They seen the injustices and they wanted to right the wrongs, at least through their own ways. But that wasn't going to happen. Here you see the 1960s, right? This is basically, here is the height of the Edomite Empire. After this is when the downfall of the Edomite Empire starts to come into play. Now, when you see this here, besides it being a freaky image, right? The kid's wearing a dress. The girl here on the left has 2 pair of legs, but remember, this is just an AI image, right? So again, it's an amalgamation of what it believes is a good representations of that era, right? This is the era where America had now won World War II. It had imported all the Nazi scientists who had now refined and developed the NASA space program, right? They had forwarded their scientific agenda, and their dominance over the world, for the most part, was cemented, right? Nobody stood up against these Edomites. Okay, these were the hunk of the earth, right? They couldn't be challenged. And the thing is they believed that this was going to go on forever. But what does the scripture say? Real quick, let me just interject here with the scripture. This is Obadiah 1:4. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest amongst the stars, thence I will bring thee down, saith Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. And this right here is talking about how these devils, at the height of their empire, managed to go into space. Now, they never made it to the moon. It's pretty obvious with the lies that these devils tell today about how they lost the technology to go to the moon. There's no master records that have any of the flight records that took place during the landing, that they lost the tapes and all this stuff, right? You had Stanley Kubrick come out and, admit to it that he was involved in the filming of the moon landing, right? But what these devils did do is they went into the low Earth orbit, also known as LEO, basically at the edge of the atmosphere, right before the Van Allen belt. So all those images you see of the International Space Station flying over the Earth, and you always see images of, lights down on Earth as it's flying over, and it's a pretty amazing sight. Well, that's as far as these devils have gotten, right? At least physically with, themselves. Now, they have managed to send out satellites, things that can survive the mass radiations of the Van Allen belt without it, being fried. Because they've sent out, animals, dogs, chimpanzees and other things past the Van Allen belt, only to have those animals be obliterated through radiation. So the point being is that when these devils got to that point, right, when they exalted themselves as the eagle, because again, when you get into the characteristics of eagles, they fly the highest and they nest the highest. Okay, so these devils, they reached the highest point that any other humans on Earth have reached. Well, at least first, that is, right? Because other nations, they're also in the low Earth orbit. But again, Esau was the first to get there, and he's definitely the only one that dominates it. Okay, but what happened when these devils will reach that pinnacle? Well, thence will I bring thee down. And that's what's happened. The Lord, after the 60s, after these devils went up into space and they had all these amazing things happen, that's when the Edomite Empire started to falter. You had an assassination of presidents. You had the counterculture come in, which started in the 70s, right? This is where the hippie movement started to come in. You had these devils experiment on themselves with LSD, psychedelics, drugs which were never before seen because they were synthesized, all in an effort to control the world and control the minds of the people. Okay, so what you're seeing here is not only this hippie free love movement, but you're also starting to see the movement of the feminist coming about. Okay, this is why this lady here is depicted alone, right? She is what you would refer to as the quintessential strong feminist woman that started in the 70s. Okay, the woman power movement and all these things, which eventually would lead to the destruction of the nuclear family, which again, this ultimately was a weapon that was created to be aimed at the nuclear family, because these devils in power, they wanted, even back at this point, they wanted to depopulate the earth. And what better way to do it than to destroy the system which brought forth large families, that being the nuclear family. Okay, this is where they started to creep into the ears of the women, just like as they did in the Garden of Eden, and they started to tell them that they themselves could also be as the men, right? Because again, when you get into the Garden of Eden and you look at that word that the serpent spoke to Eve, when it says you can be as gods, it's a small g, right? And the gods upon the face of the earth are your Israelite men. Okay, we are the gods in human form. Okay, but we're living out as men here on earth as we're going through our refinement and also our punishments. But these devils, they told the woman, Eve, that she too can be a god, right? She could be her own god, and hence she would no longer need to follow the order that the Lord set out for her, right? Well, that's what you're looking at here, is the beginning of the downfall of the Golden City. Next, let's go on to the 80s. You can see here, you've got your quintessential 80s style, right? Big hair, big shoulders, radical styles and clothing, right? A big movement or departure, I should say, from previous styles, okay? And again, I lived through the 80s. It wasn't all that great as far as style, right? But now, looking back now, only the best, parts of the fashion are highlighted now. But the point being is that this is a far cry from the previous decades that came before it. Okay, you had, not only do you see here a change in the style of dress, but also look what's depicted here. One child, right, along with multiple cars and a huge house. Okay, this is where the prosperity started to change around for these Edomites and for the nation in total. Because again, while these Edomites, they had their big houses, they had all their materialistic possessions, they started to dwindle off, right? It's no secret that the Edomite race is a dying race. They don't breed enough to have a replacement population, right? At least in large growth, that is, right? They'll still, there's still replacement numbers worldwide, but for the most part here in America, these Edomites are an endangered species. And again, that goes back to prophecies that the Lord would make these devils small amongst the heathen. Okay? And that's because of all the things that they've done. Now, let's go move on to the 90s. What you're seeing here is basically what the 90s were, right? It was a cheap copy of the 80s, a more degraded representation of the American dream, right? You had your older cars that were aged, right? You had the younger Edomites, the younger crowd that were still very proud to be American, but again, just look at their style, right? The style that's depicted here by these AI machines. Where's the suits? Where's the class? Where's the respectable person? Well, that's all gone out the window. And why is that? Well, because again, the counterculture has done a great job of destroying the morals of America. Okay, this is, remember, the 90s, right? Besides having Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer parachute pants, you had a lot of craziness come about. This is when the LGBT movement made big gains in society. Okay, back in the 80s, it was considered still very taboo to be considered homosexual, but in the 90s, this is when that movement started to gain momentum and started to gain acceptance, which again was all part of not only these Edomite devils' plan in depopulation, but also Satan's plan to bring forward the demons and the wickedness that would ultimately pollute the end of the world. Other things to note here in the images is, if you look here at the house, you can see it's not a brand new, big house. It's more of an older house that may have been inherited. Because why? Well, because though these Edomites still at this point were in power, and ultimately they're going to be in power till the very end, but you can see their kingdom, their empire, has started to get a bit of a patina on it, right? A bit, the facade was crumbling, and the wealth these devils used to command had now started to falter, right? We all know, for those who have studied economic history, the savings and loan scandal, where a lot of banks were found to be basically cooking the books. This is where the economy really started to depreciate. Okay, and again, by this time, the gold standard had been taken away. Right, I think the gold standard was taken away back in the 70s, I believe, and so this is 20 years later, where basically inflation has gone up higher, right? I remember when I first started driving back in, I think I was like 1995, right? I could buy a gallon of gas for 75 cents, right? That's here in California, okay? Now, from there, now we're paying what, like $4 or $5 a gallon on average, but at the height it's like $7. Well, that's all to do with these Edomite empire crumbling, right? Inflation is going higher and things are just getting more expensive. Well, let's move on to the 2000s. And what do you know? Look at what's being depicted here, right? A person of color, okay? Living in a city, living with old technology, right? Things that were saved from previous generations. Now, a lot of this is just a lot of junk and not really even real images, but it's what is depicted here, right? The age of the VHS and the DVD, right? You have your women who have now, for the most part, been allowed to determine their own paths with feminism, and as you can see here, it's hasn't gone too great for this particular person here, right? This is also where you get a lot of this weird counterculture of, the extra big baggy raver pants, and you have a lot of drug experimentation still going on. You have the society which would soon change forever in the events of 9/11, right? This is when these devils, these Edomites, decided to push go on their agenda. That agenda being to destroy America and to then rise up the New World Order. And what did they decide to do with America? Well, they gave it over to you Jakes. They gave it to us Israelites for us to control it. And why is that? Well, because they were done with it, okay? And it's only those Edomites, the Caucasian race, that are still holding on to the American dream and to make America great again, that do not know what these elites are doing. They don't know that they've already abandoned America, and they're now setting up their new empire over in Europe, Kazakhstan, to be precise. Okay, because Kazakhstan is going to be the home capital of the New World Order. This is why you can type in Illuminati city and you'll bring up Kazakhstan, right? This is why it's the headquarters of the world religions. Also, there's a big financial headquarters there, just like in the city of London. Okay, but I digress. Let's go ahead and take a look at this image here. This is 2010. Again, look what's depicted here. An old, rusted out car in the driveway, along with a bunch of just junk. Okay, you have an old home, an old, what looks like a craftsman home that's just, being maintained, right? See, this right here is what was considered the American dream, okay? Though it wasn't a brand new home, wasn't extremely large, right? But just simply to own a home in 2010 was considered a dream, right? It was considered success here in America, even though you couldn't afford a nice car, right? Just as long as you had a house, a place to rest your head, you were doing okay. Well, let's move on. 2020, the 2020 decade. Look at what the AI has depicted as common in this era. Well, devastation, destruction, and who is here? Is there Edomites? No, this is depicting you Israelites, right? And the funny thing is, it's namely depicting an Eve, right? This right here is the throne, the destroyed empire which Eve sits upon, which is why the strong black woman is seen as the leader here in America, right? She's been placed in positions of power as judges, as CEOs, as community organizers, leaders. Why? Because these devils, these Edomites, they've wiped their hands from America. And what have they done? They place a patsy in place, so that way when the shit does hit the fan, who gets holding the bag? Well, none other than Eve, right? The serpent has deceived her again. And this is the kingdom of ruin that us Israelites have been given, right? And for what? As for a payment or a reparation for what they've done to us. Right now that the American empire, the Golden City, has ceased, now that everything is run into the ground, infrastructure is basically crumbling apart, now they want to basically hand this over. And you have a lot of our, sellouts, a lot of the people of our nations who are still asleep in the matrix, right? Still, dreaming this American dream, which really is a nightmare. They think they're doing good. They think that now is their turn to turn things around, not realizing that these devils are done. And America soon is going to be destroyed, not only economically, but physically, right? The Lord is going to destroy America in the events of World War III. And that's also the plans of these devils. They understand when they created America back in 1776, they understood that America was an experiment. It was an experiment to rise up a nation that would be used as a hammer for the entire world to subjugate it, to conquer it, and then eventually to be a launching board for this new world order that would take over and become the new Atlantis, okay? Because these devils that are in power, the ones who, are the Freemasons, the occultists, the Jesuits, who are the houses of power in this society, they believe that they could return back to the pre-Diluvian world society that they refer to as Atlantis. We call it the time of the Adamites, okay? The people from which Adam and Eve were pulled out of. Well, these devils want to go back to that, and they want to be sitting on top. And they've used America to get to it, okay? This is why America had such strength and power, but now it seems like it's being forsaken. And that's because it's now run its course, and these devils who have used it as a tool are now done with it, and they've handed it over to you simple jakes who think that this is the next best thing. And here is the final image that this AI program depicted of America in the 2030s. Look at the roads, look at the city, look at the people. Everybody's destitute. You have what looks like planes flying over, might be warplanes or something, but for the most part the city's destroyed, right? And who is in the middle looking on as this destroyed kingdom is here? Well, none other than your Israelite, your so-called black man, looking on a destroyed empire that was left to him by these devils that have moved on and more likely are ruling over Europe, okay? Well, that right there is an AI's program and depiction of the American empire downfall, right? The American dream throughout the decades. And again, this lines up with prophecy, okay? So remember, these images were an amalgamation of what the Midjourney program was able to gather from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and the 20s, right? The 2020s, right? And what it believes the future holds. And these are all an amalgamation of these images of what it believes is a standardized image from those decades. And what we've seen from going from this to where it started off to this, or should I say this, there's a huge difference. The Golden City has ceased, and we are currently living in the remains of an empire that used to be great that is now falling down. This is Job 14:5. Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds, that he cannot pass. So these devils, they're here thinking that they're going to be able to extend their rulership by moving to different continents, to by abandoning the American system. They think that they're going to be able to rule in another manner. But that isn't going to be the way it's going to work. They're not going to be able to get their New World Order off the ground. The Lord has appointed the end to these Edomites. Not only their kingdom, but they themselves shall come to an end. And how does that happen? Well, prophecy. These devils are going to reach too far and they're going to basically fall. Okay? They're going to ultimately try to initiate a microchipping of the whole populace of the earth, and they're going to get a lot of people, but they're not going to get the 1/3 of Israelites plus the 144,000. And then eventually their actions are going to lead to a World War III against the other nations, and even the allies of these Edomites, which appear to be friendly today, are going to turn on them and are ultimately going to betray these Edomites, right? And are going to destroy them. They're going to fire upon America and the NATO allied powers, which is referred to as the beast in the Bible, and destroy it. And then when that happens, right when the destruction is about to come down, then the Lord shall show up, save the elect, and ultimately bring forth the new true world order. This is Micah 2:10. Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with a sword destruction. A lot of people think us Israelites were crazy, just like a lot of the other brothers in this truth, right? You had athletes, musicians, you had people of renown who've all seen the truth, seen that this place has no continuing status, that this place is through. And what we've done is we've decided to, well, at least me, I'm speaking for myself, I know that this world has no future. So what have I done? I've decided to follow life. I've decided to follow the true narrative of the world, right? Stick with the Lord, right? Because again, I see what's happening. I've read what the Lord's going to do. And again, for all those who have gone through the Bible, understand it, you too understand that this place is through and that there is no benefits of sticking here in Babylon. This is why it says, man, that this place is not our rest, right? Unlike you got people like these rappers and these artists, these movie stars who are fighting tooth and nail to keep America going, to make America great again, right? You have all these political pundits thinking that they could somehow save this system from the eventual collapse, which it's, fastly approaching. That shit ain't gonna happen. This place is going to fall and burn. And those who know what's really going on are gonna, hitch their wagons onto the Lord, because that's where the safety is at. That's where the truth lies at. That's where prosperity and righteousness lies at. This is Jeremiah 51:6. Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. And this slow, gradual downfall of the golden city, America, is the vengeance that the Lord is putting upon these Edomites, right? He's first bringing down their kingdom. He's causing their families to turn against them, right? All the curses that fell upon us Israelites are now starting to turn upon our enemies, right? Their kingdom is being taken away from them. Their family is being disintegrated, right? Their children, their seed is spoiled, and Esau is not, as it tells you in the scripture, right? Look at their children. They're lost, right? They think they're the opposite sex. They have all these weird notions of success, right? They're soft as hell. This place is done for, man. And again, this is why the Lord has reached out to us from the past through prophecy to warn us to not attach ourselves to the system. Because why? Because this place is on its way out, and unless you want to be destroyed with it, you ain't going to join hand in hand with it. So either way, hopefully this video was edifying, Akim. Until the next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Bashem Yahshai, Bashem Rukakodash. Shalom.